So, welcome to the podcast. Good afternoon, good evening, people and viewers watching this podcast. As you know, this is the Purple Wallet podcast, and here we want people to come and use this podcast to follow their passion as their profession. And today, I'm very lucky to have a guest with me who is literally from the wild, and I'll explain why he is literally from the wild. Anuroop Krishnan is our guest today evening, and so he has moved from the corporate jungle to the literal natural jungle. And through this podcast, we'll want to hear his journey and his story. So, welcome, Anurup, to the Purple Wallet show.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me here. Looking forward to this chat.
Thank you so much. So, I did look at your profile, and LinkedIn is a very easy platform to get some background about someone. I was very intrigued, Anurup, to understand that you are an engineer, you are an MBA, you are a salesperson, and now you are in natural and photography, wildlife photography. So let me just ask a very question which was in my mind. When you were doing your engineering, did you think you'll become a photographer, and that too a wildlife photographer?
I don't think while I was doing my engineering, I thought I would become a wildlife photographer. But it'll be fair to say that during my MBA, I had a fair sense that I'll probably be doing wildlife photography. And in that sense, I'm lucky because wildlife is something I've been interested in since I was a small kid. I can remember growing up in Bangalore and pestering my parents to take me to the zoo every other weekend and having it my way. I always knew that wildlife is going to be something I'm sort of keen on, and I felt very sort of passionately about it in the growing up years. It just so happened that photography is the way in which I am now connected to wildlife. And yeah, that came about sort of parallel with my MBA and then my first job and so on and so forth. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, through both my sales and marketing stints, I've been doing as much wildlife, so much so that some of my bosses who are kind enough to tolerate it thought that marketing is my second gig and wildlife is my main gig while I was employed. So yeah, I've been fortunate with some of those bosses and mentors at work, and that's how it's sort of gone about. Around MBA, I decided, not decided, around MBA, I sort of picked up the interest, picked up a camera, and then sort of slowly moved into it.
Wow. So, did somebody from your family or relatives delve into photography? I mean, why photography? Did it just come naturally, or you had a group in college or something like that?
No, I think photography came in as sort of a way in which you could do more wildlife, right? I mean, so what happens when you're keen on wildlife is that you sort of go to a place and you think taking a photo is a good way of remembering something. And then you sort of do more of travel, you do more of photos, and then you realize that your photos are actually able to tell a story and you become interested in that. So in my case, the way I went about it is that when I was interning during my MBA and my first year,
Mhm.
as soon as that internship offered me some money, I bought my first camera with it, which
Wow.
was like a point and shoot. And while I was doing my MBA, there's not too much opportunity for wildlife. Whatever little I saw on campus, I was shooting that. But as I moved into a job, and the first sort of thing I did with the money I got was buy a proper DSLR and a long lens.
Mm.
The job was also a sales job, so it offered me the opportunity to travel to some places which are a little bit remote in Andhra Pradesh, and I started exploring those places from a photography perspective as well. My sort of camera bag would have a lens. So as soon
Mm.
as I got my job, I also got my first SLR
Mm.
and a long lens. And I was in sales in Andhra Pradesh, and I was looking at sort of upcountry
Wow.
and the rural areas, which also offered me to travel a lot outside of the city where there is
Mm.
enough and more wildlife, birds, and all of that there. And I was sort of doing that along the side. I think in my first or second year of having a job, I also attended a wildlife
Okay.
photography workshop that was sort of done by
Where was
Kalyan
this?
Varma, a
Bangalore,
very well-known
or it
wildlife
was Andhra Pradesh?
photographer.
This was in.
This was in Bangalore, and Kalyan is the who's currently a filmmaker. Sort of was teaching folks then, and one very good outcome of that workshop was that I was introduced to a community of photographers, and some of my closest
Wow.
friends are from that workshop, right? And then Bangalore was back then a very good place to sort of do this because there's a lot of wildlife photographers. There's a big community. There was an online community called India Nature Watch where people would post their photos and get feedback. And it was a very, very welcoming, encouraging community. And I'm talking about 2008, 9, even before sort of social media became the way in which people put their work out. In a way, having that early exposure to areas where I could photograph, having the early exposure to community, and having the interest that I did as a child about wildlife, all of it sort of added up and it made me take wildlife more and more seriously. And then I sort of pursued it in parallel for about 17
Mhm.
years of working, barring a sabbatical in between where I did only wildlife. And eventually, sort of, at the end of 17 years of working, felt that if I had to do the opportunity cost evaluation between how much time there is left for me and how I'd like to spend the time versus, the amount of money I could make if I continued in a corporate job, the decision was very easy that I wanted to spend more time doing more wildlife. And I wouldn't really say that I've converted my passion to a profession or anything like that. I've just redesigned some of the aspects of my life so that I can spend more time doing
Mhm.
photography, life photography, which is what I like. And at some point, I will find a way in which I can make a profession of this. And my main job and my education and everything up until this point has given me the platform, the financial stability, and sort of the freedom to have pursued it while I was working. I had the freedom and the financial stability to sort of pursue it, and I could do wildlife. I could buy the lenses because wildlife is not
So, yeah,
a cheap hobby. It's expensive. Travel is expensive. So yeah, therefore that's what the education and the job and all of that did for me. And therefore
great.
now I have the freedom
Yeah,
to do
I mean,
wildlife.
a lot of questions from whatever you have mentioned, but one thing that came to my mind is during your corporate career, you had some big logos that you worked for, and leaving all that behind you. I mean, if I can mention a couple of them, I remember Nokia is a big name. Google, you did your internship. These are corporate logos people cherish to pursue, and leaving all of that. While you said that you did it for 17 years, and today your photographs are your logo, right? So, do you think you compromised a lot, or you're happy that you're creating a logo of your own?
So I'll come to the logo of my own part in a bit, but I really enjoyed my job. I really enjoy marketing. I was passionate about marketing in college, moved from sales to marketing at a very early part of my career, stayed in marketing throughout, and be it sort of the big MNCs like Nokia or the startups in India, or even sort of I worked in Singapore for a bit where I was leading marketing for Shopify for the Asia
Mhm.
Pacific region. All of that is something I've really, really sort of enjoyed. And it's not like, I don't
Okay.
like my work or I don't like corporate and therefore I've sort of moved into this. So there is a part of me that misses marketing
Mhm.
every now and then. But like I mentioned to you, it was very clear for me about what I
Okay.
like more. And that for me is wildlife. So in that sense, I've sort of carved out a lot more time for me to spend
Okay.
in the field, to spend editing, be it
Mhm.
videos or photos, or just be able to plan, interact with fellow wildlife photographers in the community, etc. By sort of having done this. And I really don't think I would go so far to say that, I am building a logo for myself through my own photographs. It's it's
Yeah.
it's a lot more personal in terms of I am creating the time to do what I enjoy. Some of them become interesting stories, some people enjoy them, and that's well and good. So yeah.
Was there any specific trigger or a moment which kind of made you decide to move into this 100%?
So unfortunately, no one moment sort of led me to it. But the way I'd say is that it was a very
Okay.
iterative process. Every time I went back to the jungle, I had a sense of why can't I spend a few more days here doing what I really like so much? Like I've not had a single bad wildlife
Wow.
photography trip. Okay. So every time I went, every time I tried something new, every time I tried a different place or a different format or a different style of photography, just the amount of interest, just the amount of fun I had doing it, everything sort of added up to a belief about this is what I want to do more of, and this is what I want to do more of. Like you first start off
Mm.
with birds, right? You sort of are looking at the birds around your house, and you have some really, really nice sort of small birds, and then you graduate to birds of prey. You travel a little bit more, and you see your first eagle, and then you see your first eagle sort of doing something such as picking up a smaller bird and so on and so forth. And you finally say, you know what, this is all nice and good. And then you go to your first tiger park, which I did in Tadoba in 2008, I think. And you see your tigers and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And everything that you do after that sort of is a plus one on the previous sort of thing that I had done. And it wasn't like this is the one moment where I decided that this is what I want to do. I can't think of a single moment. Every single trip for me has been a really, really sort of, what's the word? Rewarding. Every single trip has been a rewarding experience. And like I said, I'm one of those lucky people who somehow knows what I really like and don't have to sort of explore too much. I just know that wildlife is what I really like, and therefore wildlife photography came sort of naturally to me. But that being said, I think there's one or two marquee sort of moments. Like I think once when I was in Kenya, I had this thought about, wow, if I have to travel to Africa, I need to keep a lot
Mm.
more days aside and sort of, that was one of those sort of really, really sort of marquee moments for me. And then once when I was in rainforest in Karnataka in Agumbe, I felt that, this is a place where I could spend weeks on end and sort of, do a lot more work on especially some of the snakes that I found there. And those were some of the one or two places where it really, really ignited my thought in terms of, hey, I will need to carve out more time for this. But I can't think of a
Okay.
specific moment or a
Yeah.
specific sighting or an encounter that said,
I
I
think
want to
that
do
is
this.
a personality type, right? So there are some people who like land and burn all the boats behind. So, they feel that there is no need of a plan B. Plan B distracts your plan A. So I've heard a lot of people jumping into it. But I think the sense that you are sharing is very important for a lot of people who are in the corporates and have two minds. Like you don't need to just burn all bridges and jump into it. It can be an iterative process and you can plan it out. So
Absolutely.
the transition is more smooth, right? Because at some point in time, you have your liabilities, you have friends, questioning parents, wife, children. So I think the iterative process, Anurup, that you were suggesting is a very welcome messaging. And I've heard a lot of people saying that leave everything, just jump and do it and all of it. But sometimes it's safer to be more iterative than just jump into it. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an individual choice, right? I mean, there is no sort of correct or
Hmm.
incorrect way of doing it. Like one of my best friends actually spends more days in the field than I do, and he has a corporate job, right? And that's totally fine, right? But with my wife and I, what we decided, and we made some decisions that sort of helped us arrive at this point, is that I would like to spend all of my time in both the mental
Mm.
bandwidth that I have as well as the physical sort of presence in the field trying to do this. And we work towards this from a fairly early point in time. In fact, while I've taken like a break from work now and I plan to do this for a very long time, my first break came in 2016, where for a year and a half, where I tried my hand out at making money of wildlife photography and sort of doing workshops
Mhm.
and teaching, taking people out on tours. I worked with a wildlife photography company, saw what that's like. Then realized that I will need a longer rope. I will need a longer financial platform for me to be able to give myself more time to do this. Came back to corporate, worked for another 6 years or so, and again
Mm.
took this. So in my case, it was very, very clear in terms of not wanting to put the burden of bringing the money in for my, you know, important day-to-day
Yeah.
activities like be it health or be it dependence on wildlife photography. I wanted to ensure that that's sort of taken care of through the main job
Mm.
that I have, which is how it's been, while wildlife photography flourished. And like I mentioned, it's difficult to do wildlife photography unless you have a steady source of income because it is an
Sure.
expensive hobby and sort of that trade-off is there, so it's all the more harder in wildlife photography. There might be other
Mm.
hobbies and other interest areas where the cost of indulging in that is not so high, where it might be easier for people to sort of so to say not have a plan B. But in my case it was very, very imperative that I parallelly worked on my plan A's and plan B's.
But I mean, as a follow-up question, so Does a community help in developing your career as a wildlife photographer? One, it could be, I mean, you're going into the jungles, right? So the better to go with a community or take someone else's previous examples. The other is, like you said, the cost of, the equipment and things like that. So is there a
Yeah,
community which helps each other either in terms of tools, products, or experiences? And does it really help in exploring this as a career?
for sure. I wouldn't say so. Whether it helps as a career or not is sort of a separate
Mhm.
point entirely. But in general, having a community helps because there are multiple things a community sort of brings to you. One is obviously wildlife is expensive. So if you're able to go with a set of
Mm.
like-minded people who want to do the same thing, then you are likely to do all you're likely to spend all your time doing sort of wildlife photography. Like if you're the one
Mm.
wildlife photographer in a group of four people who go to, let's take
Yeah.
Goa, for example, right? When four wildlife photographers go to Goa, they're unlikely to go to a beach. They will instead go straight into a rainforest and photograph frogs and fungi there and come back. But if you're a one wildlife photographer in sort of a group of three or four people, you might have those trade offs where you might do one session in the rainforest, but you're spending most of your time in a beach. So, firstly, find that community, find your own
Oh,
group of, I would go so far and say, find your own group of people who are interested in the same
oh,
forms of wildlife
okay.
as you are, right? And secondly, where a community really helps is that it's easier to learn in a community. What happens with wildlife is that beyond a point, it becomes hard to get feedback
Mm.
on your work. It becomes hard to improve your craft. But a community with people discussing this, with people having or maybe an access to a friend or somebody else is doing it, it becomes that much more easier. The community also has a lot of these photography tours and photography mentors who take people out and teach them wildlife photography in the field. They're then connected throughout, and there's back and forth in terms of what works, what doesn't work. That's the second place where the
Mm.
community can help you with. And coming back to cost, right? I know a few people who share equipment between themselves. I know some people who like have a big lens that they use between themselves. So that's really helpful as well. Or if you're renting equipment, you can split that cost. And I think the most unique way in which community can help is that my friend and I, when we travel together, we don't worry about who is making the image because beyond the point, you need somebody to assist you in the field. You need somebody to set the shot up, you need somebody to set a flash up, and you need somebody to sort of hit the trigger. So it becomes more than a one person job. So when my friend Sumit, whom I sort of mentioned about earlier as well, and I go out, we don't worry about which one person gets the shot as long as the shot is made. So a community sort of helps you work together. But then that has to sort of be something you build over the years, right? So Sumit and I have known each other for maybe 15 or so years. So now it's easier for us to have that trust between, hey, this is our image, it's a shared image. And we don't worry about whose image it is. So a community is really, really critical for you in terms of building your craft, in terms of being able to do more wildlife photography. And I think how you make it a career or not is sort of up to you because the career aspect of wildlife is a little bit difficult in India because there's nobody who pays for a wildlife photo, right? There's very few people who are willing to give you any amount of money for a photo that you click. There used to be magazines who do that. There still are magazines who do that, but you really can't live off it. The earning potential in wildlife photography in India comes from either teaching or doing workshops or taking people on tours. Or I know that if you're able to do films really well and if you're able to tie up with production houses and sort of either film for them or work on films with them, there is this potential there. There's some amount of money in sort of wildlife storytelling, but it's hard to sort of build your sort of career there. But cannot sort of, undermine the importance of community. Community is super important. Whatever you're doing sort of wildlife photography for, find your community, sort of find your friends and find ways in which you can sort of do more of
So
it
this is a
together.
good lesson to viewers who are thinking. I mean, find your tribe to vibe. So I think not only vibe over here, but it helps in multiple other things, right? Whatever you have mentioned. I think good. So many points you were saying, Anurup, about photography. A lot of people just see the glamour and think that yeah, nice safari. Let's take a jeep and get into it. But I have seen some of your videos where you spent hours trying to get that single and sometimes in the rain, in the muck, in the wet. And I will, of course, share the link. I would urge people to go and see your videos. So, I mean, how much of I mean, first misconception is there about wildlife photography. People think the glamour is there, but you can just elaborate. Like maybe for that one picture, maybe hours and sometimes days and weeks go. So there is a misconception. Not, I wouldn't say misconception, or a rather heightened sense of glamour, which really is not the truth. Possibly, if you can just throw some light on that.
So I think, yeah, I think two or three broad areas. The first one is that when you say wildlife photography, people typically think of Africa, a 4x4 open vehicle, people in
True.
khakis and hats and long lenses. And yes, that is all well and good. And I absolutely enjoyed that kind of photography, but it's only one aspect
Okay.
of photography, right? There's a lot more to wildlife photography. I mean, you can photograph birds, you can photograph frogs and snakes, you can photograph insects and really small things, you can photograph plants and so on and so forth. And the other thing which people tend to think of as wildlife photography is you have to travel, you have to go to some pristine place and you have to spend some time there to take photos. I think the spending time part is true, but you don't need to travel that much. Like when we all started off, we all had this sort of proverbial backyard we could go to often to sort of hone our craft. For me, it was in some of these places around Bangalore. I lived in Hyderabad for a few years. It was in the small lakes around Hyderabad. Even in Bangalore, back in the day, Lalbagh was a great place to just go and photograph birds. There's this lake called the Mariwala Lake near my parents' house, which is a great place to go and photograph birds. During COVID, when I was staying with my parents, in our really small garden, I photographed about 20 different species of spiders, right? You have some sunbirds and some premias that come every now and then and nest. I see about 13, 14 different species of birds. They're very small terrace
Mm.
garden, right? And that is the thing about wildlife photography. You don't necessarily have to
Okay.
travel. You don't have to sort of go somewhere. Wildlife photography could be something that you do from your own balcony, or if you just go to any sort of open wide area near you, you might be able to find something which you haven't seen before. You have to spend the time, you have to be patient, and you have to observe keenly. Yeah, and a high amount of patience is like a baseline requirement for
But
wildlife.
yeah,
So yeah,
very true.
it is something that
People
one
who
should.
don't have patience, guys, you can just opt out from this, because the number of hours and the number of time you have to spend to get that perfect pick. But Anurup, I think when the good point that you mentioned is you really don't have to think that this is something which you have to like. There is a spending, but the initial days when you're honing your craft,
Yes.
you can just go to any place which has a lot of greenery and a lot of insects and birds and pick up your specialization. So that's a great thing. And that will really motivate a lot of people to do this as a parallel gig. I think early on you mentioned that while you pursued this full time, there was always that silent whisper, right? And which was there saying that, and we tend to look at, oh, we have to take care of our kids and other liabilities. So we kind of try to drown that whisper, but very, very good point that we can still focus on the small things and go ahead. To come back to the other aspect of your craft, so how much of research do you have to do? Because you have gone from places like forests to deserts and different countries. What amount of research is required to, make that event a success? Can share something about that.
I will. But before that, I just want to also go back to something that you said inadvertently, which is go to a green place and anything you find there, you can photograph, which is absolutely correct. And I think that's the other slight misconception about wildlife, which is that you need greenery for it. You will be amazed at the amount of wildlife you
Wow.
can find in the desert. Like some of my favorite places in India to photograph are Tal Chapur, which is in the Churu district, which is the
Uh,
driest district in Rajasthan, India, or the Thar Desert, or for example, the Run
okay.
of Kutch, which is again a dry, barren
Wow.
desert, right? So yeah, it doesn't even have to be green. You just have to go to open wild places wherever they are, and you will be able to find
Good.
things there. Is the way I ask people to think about wildlife. Coming to preparation, when I started off, there wasn't much preparation. Okay, I was carrying one camera and one lens, and I was happy to just be out there. And I sort of miss those days now because right now the preparation gets fairly intense. I think as you move more and more into it, it gets sort of more and more intense. So in the beginning, when I started off, I was happy to go to a habitat, photograph everything I saw there. I'd go to Run of Kutch, I go to that place in different seasons. We drive around. If we saw flamingos, we'd photograph flamingos. Or if we saw the falcon, we'd photograph falcons. Or if we saw the wild asses, we'd photograph them. But as I started doing more and more of that, I sort of got some ideas about specific subjects like the desert fox. And, you say you want to make a fox, and then you start making a trip only around the fox. And you then think about, hey, what are the best seasons to see the fox in? What are the best sort of times of year? What are the best behaviors you can see them in? When are the pups around? How do you want to photograph the pups? That's one part of research. And then you look around, who are the best guides that you can find? Then you do a lot of asking, and you do a lot of social media sort of research on where people are going. A lot of people book in advance, and then you sort of book your stays and so on and so forth. And the third level is if I need to make these kind of shots, what are the kind of equipment that I need? Do I have all of them? Do I need to rent something? And that's sort of the third level of research, right? And as the years have gone by, the research and the preparation to a trip has only got more and more intense, and you cannot have sort of enough of it, right? There is no amount of preparation which is enough, and there is no amount of preparation that sort of goes unused. So much so that when we went to Botswana, we had enough research which we had done to make an entire podcast episode. And my friend has made like a beautiful Notion page on it. Likewise, when we went to Spiti earlier this year to photograph the snow leopards, the amount of research that went into it became a podcast episode for anyone else who sort of wants to go there, right? And I think the research is important because at the end of the day, we are at the mercy of wildlife doing something, right? You are sort of, you can research all you want, but if you go there and you don't find anything, right, you can't do much. But what the research does is that it maximizes our chances of getting the kind of behavior we want, of seeing the kind of behavior we want, and getting the kind of shots we want, right? So before we went to Botswana, we read a fair bit about what the seasons in Naipan are like. What do we need to look for at Naipan? So we realize where we need to spend our time. We realize that lions in a pride, if a lion female is away, what it might mean, what it might not mean. And just some of that research and sticking to one lioness helped us see her make a hunt and a kill, right? It might not have ended that way. She might not have hunted. But I think the reason we stuck to her is because some of the research and study we did earlier led us to believe that she is up to something, and it makes sense to sort of spend time with her instead of sort of going after, say, the male lion or anything like that. So that is true in every aspect of wildlife photography. When you go to Goa during the monsoon, you want to know what the good time to see bioluminescent fungi and mushroom are. If you want to see, for example, the dancing frogs, there's a different time for it. You want to research that time. You also want to research that behavior. And as a photographer, while a guide can take you to a point, you have to do your own research in terms of what leads an animal to do something so that you can plan your photos accordingly, right? If there's a specific point in which sort of a dancing frog, it does this really beautiful flagging behavior when it lifts its hind legs. And there is a video on that. I'll share the link along with the description maybe. But for you to know when that's about to come and for you to have your camera ready, you need to have sort of done your research and know that that is coming about. So research is super important. Research is critical. And the other kind of research which I forgot to mention is I personally go through the kind of work that other photographers and other storytellers have done from the place so that I get an idea of what more I could do or what I could sort of double down on
Mm.
equipment wise or, image creation wise. So yeah, I think the the amount of research that goes into making something helps me give myself more chances of making the image that
A
I would like.
lot of research from whatever you have said. I think there is a lot of research, and rightly
Yes.
so, because like you said, as you get more mastering this form of art, people start looking up to you, or you might not know it, but people, you have a lot of followers, by the way, Anurag. So you know that people are looking up to you, and yeah, I think that is a good thing. Giving back with all of your experiences. But I want to just check with you. I mean, in spite of all the research, did you, in any of your journeys, get stumped by any animal behavior? Or I saw your dancing frog video. It was very nice to see one of the hind legs move, and it was to either compete with another male frog or probably attract a female frog. I mean, such great behaviors. But any specific example where, in spite of all the research and planning, you were like stumbled, oh my God, this happened types, either from animal or any experiences, anything?
Yeah, I think that kind of happens all the time, right? You, I mean, what I gave you as examples for places where it worked, but the default setting in wildlife is that you go to a place and nothing shows up. Okay, so that is like the default setting in wildlife. So that happens all the time. But there are a few times when you sort of research really
Helped. Mm.
helps. One of the times where we've been really, so to say, stumped by a wildlife behavior is when we were in this park called the Kwai, which is
Hmm.
again in Botswana, and it's a community concession which is maintained by the community. And we found out about a leopard that had stashed a wild. Um, uh, uh, and then we found out about a leopard that had stashed a kill on a tree, and likely to spend time there because they will be on that tree until sort of they finish the kill, right? So we knew that we had 2 or 3 days with that leopard, and we were photographing that. And one really unexpected thing happened where we've always seen interactions between carnivores on Nat Geo, and we say, "Oh, what a rare moment it is." You've seen hyenas sort of chase lions, or lions
Yeah.
chase hyenas away, or you see hyenas chase a leopard up a tree. And we were while we were just photographing this leopard, she was really nicely sitting on a branch and posing. She got very agitated and she ran up the tree. And we were like, "What's going on?" And a few seconds later, we saw 2 lions walk by, and they tried to climb up the tree, and they tried to reach the kill, which is placed very high up, but they couldn't get there. But it was an amazing
Mm.
interaction. So yeah, I think the research helped in terms of us knowing that spending time with the leopard is sort of worthwhile because she is going to be there until the kill
Mm.
is done. And the bonus was sort of having 2 lions, which is completely unexpected. And
Yeah.
those are the kind of things I've only seen in
True.
documentaries before, right? So never imagined I'd be able to see something like that myself. So yeah, that was that
That's
was that
nice. I
was
mean,
quite
but
something.
what about those vipers? A lot of ordinary people, including me, we're just so scared of the creepy crawlies. I saw you taking some very close-ups of the vipers. I mean, so did you feel that there's a little bit of a danger just going into the wild, that aspect? And plus, animals are still animals, right? There are those rare behaviors you never know. But how do you go about this thing?
So yeah, uh, you have to be responsible both for your safety as well
Mhm.
as the animal safety. There are sort of no two ways about it. While it might look like I'm very close to a viper or sort of any other snake in a video, one thing I don't do is handle any animal. I don't sort of pick up a snake, put it somewhere, etc. The When you see me sort of get close to an animal in sort of a video, I've already taken my photos and I've got a good sense of what this animal's sort of trust radius is. How close can I go without disturbing it? Where can I stay? And so on and so forth. So the onus of the safety of that animal as well as myself is on me. And while we are photographing vipers, I don't think I'm as worried about getting bitten by a
Wow,
snake
that's a
in
big
that
thing
place because
for
it's
people.
yeah, I'm actually worried about bigger things, right? Because the same forest also has maybe tigers, the same forest also has guards and so on and so forth. So that's what you want to be
Yeah.
sort of worried about. You want to, which is why I always have somebody with me
Mm.
who's a local or who's a guide from the forest department who knows their way around the place. If I'm going to a new place, I'm never doing things alone by myself. I
Mm.
always have someone with me who knows the place very well, who knows where sort of the boundaries of
Mm.
safety lie. And I
Mm.
stick to the rules. I don't
Mm.
break the rules. I
Mm.
don't go for bravery. I always stick to the safety
Mm.
side of things than the brave side of things because
Yeah.
this can be, you don't want to get mauled by an elephant. You don't want to get mauled by a bear. And you also need to understand that we are sort of in
Yes.
their territory while we're doing all of this, and we have to be respectful of that. And the onus of both the safety lies on the person who is there and not on the animal. So I take due care to ensure that there is someone with me. I'm going on paths that are sort of chalked out for these things, and I'm sticking to what people have sort of done before, or where people have gone out and done these in the
No, but I
past. So
think
yeah.
in any new trade or any new profession, I think the issue we are discussing is fear. It can have different forms, right? So if you want to become a public speaker, I mean, speaking in front of 1,000 people is as scary as meeting a viper for that matter. And I think the message over here is tread cautiously. Don't try to do unnecessary things. And, whatever the rules of the law is, respect it. And I think then in whatever profession you are trying to pursue, there will always be success. So that's good. Wanted to check because a lot of photography.
So
Yeah.
just on that point, right?
Yeah.
On the point of fear, there is a slightly interesting conundrum because my favorite subjects are also the subjects I'm most scared of. I have this really irrational fear of lizards. Okay, I cannot explain, but if you see a small gecko somewhere, I'm super scared of it. But I also really like photographing lizards. Like I've spent a lot of time at this place called Tal Chapar
Mhm.
photographing a lizard. I've also photographed a lot of the larger monitor lizards when
Mhm.
I was in Singapore. And I went to Indonesia once to the Komodo Islands to photograph the
Yeah.
Komodo dragon, which is a lizard which is bigger than your average crocodile.
Wow.
And what I've noticed through all these sort of things is that there is a point at which you're getting scared and the fear is always there. But for me personally, at some point, the desire to make the image
Oh, yeah.
takes over. And I'm like, yeah, let me sort of go and get done with this and sort of
Mhm.
let me see what happens. And slowly that takes over and the fear goes away. That's how it works for me, which is just about going about the motions and thinking about the outcome and thinking about what
Yeah.
I want to get out of it. And that's sort of slowly, but it's not like that makes me less fearful the next time I'm there. The next time I'm there, I'm still scared of the lizard. But yeah, it's a process I go through, and
I think,
eventually I've gotten
yeah.
better at getting over the fear and not necessarily feeling less afraid,
Yes,
if
yes,
that makes
absolutely.
sense.
I mean, Salman Khan in very many years back in one commercial said that, right? "डर के आगे जीत है." So kind of trivializes
Something
the
like that,
fear,
exactly.
trivializes the
Yes.
fear. But I think the point what we are trying to say, and I totally appreciate that any profession, any role or anything which is outside a comfort zone will come with fear. But do it scared anyway. And I think the next step
Yeah.
is always there. Great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was asking about in today's day and world, everybody is a photographer. I mean, everybody is a videographer. Everybody makes very good. I don't want to demean any platform, but the platforms have made all of us great photography. So, I mean, did anyone come and ask you? I think whatever you are doing is all AI generated. Did anybody kind of think? I know I'm just kind of pulling this one, but today people are really not sure. I mean, the ordinary people. So how much of that element of you have to think of when you are finishing a episode or finishing a product, and how authentically do you want to present it to connect to the audience?
Yeah. So I don't think anybody has ever asked me if the videos I make or the photos I make are AI, which might be a reflection of them not being good enough,
No.
maybe, or them not being up to what AI creates. But I think I'm not. So I use AI a fair bit in my work in terms of when I upload a video, I've realized that it's easy to make a thumbnail on YouTube using AI, right? Than in terms of shooting it. AI, especially Nano Banana from Gemini, sort of helps me do that. I use ChatGPT extensively for my research, like before going to a place, before sort of looking up, like on the Spiti trip, I used ChatGPT extensively to understand a lot about both snow leopards as well as the ibex behavior, right? And in its research mode, in its deep research mode, which is available in 5.1, ChatGPT actually gives me a lot of details about not just the behavior, but also its authentic sources. Like I really want sort of, hey, give me a peer reviewed article on where this is there so that I know I am not, at the mercy of some of the hallucinations some of these AIs can make. So in that sense, I use AI for work. And if somebody also wants to use like AI for the kind of work that they want to do, even if it is to create a video or something, I'd encourage them, right? Because it really comes down to what the person sort of wants to do, what their objective is, what they want to get out of it. In my case, being in the wild is the reward. Okay. Not so much the image that I make out of it, like I explained. And I don't think AI is there yet for me
Right.
to be able to replace that for me. Maybe in the future, there is going to be a combination of VR and AI that can simulate a better, like, I don't know, South Africa tour than what I actually
No
get in
worries.
South Africa
That's
when I go there. And I'll probably think about it a little more then. But for me, the
yeah.
reward is being in the field. For me, the reward is, I mean, some people look at spending hours in the rain with nothing to come as punishment. Some people look at it as the best thing that has happened to them. And I'm one of those people, right? So for me, the reward is being out in the field. And for me, therefore, using AI to create images is not
Okay.
really a motivation. I use a lot of AI tools to
Mm.
edit my images, right? If you look at Lightroom and Photoshop, they've both got a bunch of
Mm.
good AI features, but I don't edit them beyond what I
Mm.
normally edit my photos otherwise. People have this slightly nuanced, people have this slightly negative opinion on editing. They think that because Photoshop is there, images are edited and they're not original. But even darkroom, when there was
Mm.
no digital, when people were
Mm.
using their films, were
Mm.
edited, right? Even the colors there could be exaggerated and so on and so forth. So editing has always been a photographer's choice in terms of what she believes is the right amount of mix to put in it, right? And my editing is in such a way that I try to make it as natural as what it was when I saw it. I believe that my eyes are the best recording
Mm.
mechanism out there. No camera, even the most expensive ones, don't do justice to what my eyes see. So on the edit, I try to make it as close to what it is based on my memory of what I saw there. I don't add elements, I don't remove elements. So if AI makes that workflow of bringing the colors out
Yeah.
easier, which it does, if AI does the job of reducing the noise, because you don't see noise when you're seeing something in the dark, but your cameras capture a lot of noise. So if AI is doing a good job of removing that noise, I use those features. But yeah, all
But I
well and
think
good.
you kind of nailed it when you said that for you the reward is spending those hours in the rain, and I think that authenticity comes across people in their work. So yeah, the best of the AIs can't replace the human emotion or the passion which you call, right, and very well it shows. I mean, they're and today's audiences are very reflective. I mean, they would prefer or they would also enjoy AI generated head of a lion and animation running and working, which is completely AI,
Yes.
versus even the authenticity of actual wildlife photography. So I think yes, both of it are good, but it's the creator who is at the helm of it. As long as that person connects to what he or she is doing, I think you can't authenticity, right, or honesty, right. I think that truly reflects from the work. So coming back to your work, we spoke a lot about the technicalities and really understood a lot about photography, which I didn't know, and wildlife behavior for that matter. So I mean, what's at the end of it, Anurup? So do you foresee that through your work you want to create lasting images? Do you think you want to spread a message to people in terms of vocation? How to? I mean, what's kind of guiding you to continue the journey?
So I think wildlife photography is a slightly uh, it's slightly tricky in that sense, right? I mean, of course, there is a byproduct of an image coming through, and maybe somebody uses it in a journal somewhere, and it contributes to conservation in
Okay.
some small way. But the fundamental essence of wildlife is that you are going to a place and you are creating an impact on it, and you are sort of take a flight there. There are emissions, and those emissions are harmful to the place that you go to. So that is kind of the conundrum that you live with. I personally don't think that my work might contribute, for example, to a larger cause like conservation. It might be an outcome, right? If somebody wants an image, if a school wants to borrow my images, and I've done this multiple times in the past, to include it as a part of the curriculum for something, I'm happy to give it away for free. And if a researcher wants some of my images to sort of explain a behavior that they're writing in a paper, I've sort of given it away in the past. But I see my role as somebody who tells sort of stories from nature, right? Earlier, it used to be in the form of images. Later on became about writing and images together. Now it's through videos and images. Because what I want sort of the people to feel is, to whatever extent possible, the way I feel when I'm in a jungle, right? And I feel some of the, like, there are so many emotions that I go through when I'm in a jungle, right? And even if it is the sadness of not being able to find something, but the reward of having spent the entire day in the wilderness, how do I sort of
Mm.
explain that? Or if it is, for example, the joy of seeing something really, really beautiful, but you're seeing it not in the pristine forest, but in front of a garbage dump, which has happened often. So, sort of, that's another kind of emotion. So I see myself as somebody who wants to share these stories in the best way. I experience them to everyone else. And it's for, and if there is like somebody else who wants to use it for conservation or any other larger goal, that's good. But I wouldn't go so far and claim that I am contributing to conservation. I am wary of that because, like I said, for me, it's a very personal. I'm doing it because it brings me a lot of joy, and therefore I've pursued this path. And yeah, let's see
So
where it
and
goes.
while the bigger issues like conservation may be one thing, but I think the very fact that you are bringing nature close to someone, everybody, all of us don't get that time, right? Whenever we get our holidays, we plan friends, relatives, a beach or a mountain. So, I mean, this element of looking at nature in its elements, if you can call, I think you are bringing that view to the people. I think that itself is rewarding for all of us on the other side of the table. So that's very nice. So what would you say, Anuroop, for people who want to, kind of start their journey or want to pursue either as a hobby or as an interest? What are one or two things they should keep in mind when they are like aspiring wildlife photographers? Firstly, should they go for it or not? I mean, so if anybody has two thoughts in their mind, how should they go about, and what would you say?
So I think I'm a little bit. I've never seen myself as somebody who's sort of good enough to give advice. So I'll ask everybody to take everything I say with a huge pinch of salt, if not a bucket load. But I'd say go for it if you really like nature, right? The reason why you, in my opinion, somebody should sort of do more of wildlife photography is because they love wildlife, right? Not so much
Okay.
photography. For me, like I said, what works me really well is photography being a way to
Mm.
be in touch with wildlife. And what I'd also say, and some of these are out of the costly lessons I've had, is it's important to it it's the equivalent of practicing in nets for cricket, right? You want to, when you get your cameras in the beginning, as exciting as it is to go to a faraway exotic place, it's equally important to hone your craft on things around your house: crows, pigeons, doves, parakeets, whatever you find. So that when you actually go there and when you see that amazing animal or bird that you want to see, you're not thinking settings on your camera and looking at your camera and fiddling around with the buttons. All of that becomes like muscle memory for you. And out there, you're really thinking on the aesthetic part of photography, like a composition or a direction of light or how you want to frame it, and ensure that you know your gear, you know your focal lengths, and you know your devices well enough so that the technicalities and the science part of it is automatic for you. And you're only thinking about the art part of it sort of when you're there is what I sort of tell anyone who's sort of
Great.
thinking
I think
about it.
that's a great piece of advice. No, it's not. I mean, the hours you spent, Anurup, itself, in that craft is great. I mean, a lot of people are just starting over. They are in the edge of their seats that should I or shouldn't I? I think that really helps these kind of things. So, I mean, one more last point before I go to the last section is, there's a lot of travel in this. And I personally like to do a lot of road trips. And what I saw was many times you're driving and, I kind of thought, oh, next time I'll, kind of partner with you. I'll do the driving and you can do the photography. So, and coincidentally, I have a Discovery sticker in my car, and people think, they expect the zoom lenses and all. They don't find anything in me. Small anecdote, but great. All the points that you mentioned are great. So, I have one last section, which is a rapid fire kind of very deep, thoughtful questions. So, if you are okay, can I start with that? The first one is definitely a little heavy.
Sure.
It's a very simple question, like because many people have different elements of the word success. What does the word success mean to you?
Yeah, it's again fairly personal. Success for me is spending more time in the field and lesser time indoors. I look
Sure.
at it that way. This year is better than last year because I was out more days in the field this year than last year. Hopefully next year will be better. So only one metric for success: how much
Super.
time am I out
That's
there
a
for?
great element of success. I think a lot of my children will love it. They just want to spend their time outside. They don't want to spend time at home. But from where you are, I
Why
think
not?
it's a very different meaning that you are saying, and I get it completely. So the second question, again a deep one. Who or what is your greatest motivation?
I thought a lot about this, in terms of what's motivating me. And I think the more I think about it, like it comes down to this, right? There are magical things happening out there. Okay. There is a lion stalking a gazelle somewhere. There is a mushroom that is sporing somewhere. There are spiders, weaving the web somewhere, and all of that is happening there. And sort of, I am out here. I'd much rather be out there. That for me is my biggest motivation. I thought a lot about, there's a lot of things that motivate me, but the biggest motivation is I need to be out there.
Super.
That's
Well,
what it
great.
is.
The third one, I think, connected to the second question. So, I mean, you did mention that outdoors is your greatest motivator. But if you have to rate between to go out there, is it a skill that is pushing you, or is it the will that is pushing you? And in this HR fraternity, there's a lot of talk of skill and will. So, I come from the HR fraternity. So, to you, I mean, what is it? What pushes you, or rather, what do you think is more important? Skill, will?
I think how shall I say this, right? I think it's a fair balance of both, in the sense that you have to be upping sort of your skill, right? In a way, if I have the same exact experiences time after time after time after time, I might get bored with it. But everything I see is different, and everything sort of throws a new challenge at me. And therefore, I need to skill myself slightly differently to do something else, which is through a new technique, a new way of editing, or a new piece of
Yeah.
gear, and so on and so forth. And I think the way it is that they sort of contribute into each other. Because I have the will, I'm able to go out as often as I would like to, not as often as I'd like to, but also as often as I can. And then I come back and realize that there are some gaps that I need to upskill myself. And then I skill myself, and I'm excited to go back again, saying that if this happens again, and I can make this kind of shot. So in my case, they sort of feed into each other,
Yeah,
if that makes
absolutely. I
sense.
think professions where there is dependency on tools are a lot. That I mean, of course,
Yeah.
photography there is the art part of it, but a lot of, like you said, newer tools coming in. If you're not skilled in that particular tool, I think your motivation will only stop till there because you'll fidget, like you very well
Yeah.
said about these tools. Okay, my next question is: man or animal? Who are you most comfortable with? And it's very deep, actually. If you want to make it think very deep, yeah.
No, I'm definitely more comfortable with people. Like I said, I have like a loving family. I have a great group of friends. Animals are great wildlife photography subjects, but yeah, that's
Okay,
pretty
great.
much
So
what they are.
fine.
So yeah.
So I know family comes first, but suppose you are out and you were lost in some jungle. I know many people would have cried, but you would be more comfortable in that environment if you had a camera with you. But which is there any specific jungle you would like to get lost into, or some wildlife where you would like to spend a lot of time?
Yeah. When you think about it, you want to be in a jungle where you are also feeling a little bit safe, and you know that tigers, bears, elephants, etc. aren't around, right? And I thought a lot about this. And you also want a good amount of wildlife. Like you don't want, for example, to be in the Thar Desert where you could sort of maybe dive coat. And one thing which sort of ticks all boxes for me, which is that I'm likely to be safe there, weather is good, and there's tons of wildlife to shoot in
Wow,
Madagascar. I've been there in 2017. It is one of the most beautiful
super.
places I've seen, and it's got some of the most unique wildlife I've seen.
Yes. And there's
Definitely
a
that.
turtle or a tortoise, I think, in Madagascar. I don't know, which is supposed to be a very huge, big one. I don't know if that's there, but definitely a lot of flora and fauna.
Haven't been up to date on that
But
news, but yeah,
that's a
we'll
good
look it
one.
up
That's a
now.
nice one. So great. But definitely not the corporate jungle, right? To kind of at least not at this stage.
Oh, for sure, not the
Not at
corporate
this
jungle.
stage. Yeah,
No,
great.
no, no,
I think yeah,
no. I mean,
yeah.
I love my job. Corporate was good. Corporate has been kind to me, and all of that. I really, really enjoyed the
Mm,
various roles I had in all companies
yeah.
I've had them in. But my heart is
Right.
very
Yeah.
much in
I
wild.
think you are, I mean, you've like just talking to you for the last 1 hour, has really been enlightening because where I am coming from is people who bucket the work and passion. Many people do bucket it, but talking to you was very good because you kind of seamlessly integrated one with other, and that really helped me understand, get a good insight, and I'm sure to people who will see this now or in the future, and they will learn not only about wildlife photography but also the transition of work and how to balance work and get into something that you're really interested in and take that forward. So I think with this kind of ending our session, I know it was slightly less, I think, off the line. We can take more of this conversation. But Anuroop, thank you so much for coming and helping me in this episode and sharing your views about your profession, and wishing you all the best and a lot of success in spending time in the jungles and creating great pictures for us.
So thank you. I mean, thank you for all the kind words. Thank you for finding me worthy of being on your podcast. And thank you for the wonderful interaction. I absolutely enjoyed it as well. And maybe we can do another one of these
Thank you
at
so
a later
much.
point. Yeah. Love the
Thank you.
conversation.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.